Russia, a land of ice and fire, a nation built by warriors, ruled by czars, scarred by revolutions, and reborn as a nuclear superpower. This is the 1,100-year story of how Russia rose, fell, and rose again. Part 1, the beginning of Rus 1. The Vikings arrive 862 CE. Slavic tribes live in forests. Viking Prince Rurik establishes rule in Novgorod. Beginning of the Rus state, this is where Russia begins. Not with Moscow, not with the czars, but with Vikings. 2. Oleg and the rise of Kiev, moves capital to Kiev. Expands trade with Byzantines. Rus becomes rich. 3. Vladimir the Great, 988 CE, converts Rus to Christianity, creates cultural unity. Cyrillic script spreads. 4. Yaroslav the Wise builds laws. Libraries. Kiev becomes a medieval superpower. Part 2. Mongol invasion and 200 years of darkness. 1. The Mongol storm, 1237 CE. Genghis Khan's descendants invade cities burned. Millions killed. Rus pays heavy tribute to Mongols. Narrator. For 2 centuries, Russia was ruled by fear and by the Mongol Golden Horde. 2. Moscow rises from the ashes. A tiny town becomes a tax-collecting center. Wealth grows. New rulers, known as Grand Dukes of Moscow. Part 3. The birth of a nation. Ivan I, Ivan II, Dmitry Donskoy. Moscow becomes strongest. Rus state battle of Kulikovo, 1380. First major defeat of the Mongols. Ivan III, Ivan the Great, frees Russia from Mongols, builds the Kremlin. Marries Byzantine princess, claims Russia inherits Roman Empire. Third Rome, Ivan IV. Ivan the Terrible, first Tsar of Russia, expands empire to Siberia, builds St. Basil's Cathedral, creates secret police. Reign of Terror. Part 4. The Romanov Dynasty. 1. Time of troubles, 1600s. Famine, Polish invasion, civil war. Narrator. Russia was collapsing, then a new dynasty appeared. 2. The Romanovs begin, 1613. Michael Romanov becomes Tsar, stabilizes Russia. Part 5. Peter the Great. The Tsar who modernized Russia travels Europe in disguise, builds navy, creates St. Petersburg, window to the west. Forces modernization. Wins Great Northern War, Russia becomes an empire. Part 6. Golden Age of Catherine. The Great Catherine the Great, 1762-1796, expands empire to Black Sea, crushes Ottoman Empire, annexes Crimea. Arts, culture, philosophy flourish. This was Russia at its brightest and its most ambitious. Part 7. Imperial Russia and Downfall. 1. Napoleon invades, 1812. Russian winter destroys French army. Russia becomes defender of Europe. 2. Industrial Age. Slow modernization, serfdom ends in 1861. Economic struggles. 3. Last Tsars, Alexander III and Nicholas II. Russia faces revolutions, defeat in Russo-Japanese War. Massive poverty, World War I destroys the empire, fall of the Romanovs, 1917. Tsar Nicholas II abdicates, Bolsheviks rise. Civil War begins, Part 8. Birth of the Soviet Union. 1. Lenin, 1917 to 1924, creates world's first communist state, nationalizes industry. Civil War. Red Army wins. 2. Joseph Stalin, 1924 to 1953, industrialization, collectivization, famines, gulags, total control. World War II, 1941 to 1945. Hitler invades, siege of Leningrad, Battle of Stalingrad. Red Army reaches Berlin, USSR becomes superpower. 3. Cold War era, 1945 to 1991. Nuclear weapons, space race, Sputnik and Gagarin. Wars in Afghanistan, economic collapse. Soviet fall in 1991. The Soviet Union rose like a storm and disappeared like a shadow. Part 9. Modern Russia, 1991 to 2025. 1. Boris Yeltsin, 1991 to 1999. Economic chaos, oligarchs rise, corruption spreads. 2. Vladimir Putin, 2000 to 2025. Rebuilds economy, controls media, strengthens military annexes. Crimea, 2014. War in Ukraine, 2022 to 2025. Faces sanctions, isolation alliances with China, Iran, modern Russia's power. Nuclear arsenal, oil and gas influence cyber warfare units. Space technology, Wagner mercenaries. Global security influence final. Russia's legacy, 160 minutes end. For 1,000 years, Russia has survived Mongols, emperors, revolutions, dictators, and wars. It has risen as an empire, fallen as a Soviet giant, and returned as a modern power. Final cinematic lines. Narrator. This is Russia. Vast, cold, relentless, unpredictable. A nation that changes the world not by asking, but by force.